Hey, it's Todd, and in this video, I'm going to tell you about the RingCentral module for NodeRED. Hey, welcome back. I want to talk to you about a module that I built for NodeRED to interact with the RingCentral APIs. And RingCentral has a ton of different APIs. They have APIs for voice, they have APIs for team chat, faxing, voice over IP, all kinds of really cool stuff. But the one API that I find the most interesting and I like to play with the most is the SMS API. So it allows you to send and receive SMS messages from your applications. And they have all kinds of different SDKs to use to send and receive text messages. But they have a Java SDK, they have JavaScript, Node.js APIs, but I wanted to integrate this functionality into NodeRED. I do a lot of integrating with MQTT topics that are receiving data from IoT nodes, things like that. So I wanted to be able to send and receive text messages as part of my flows. This enables me to do things like interact with Alexa devices through the Alexa modules for NodeRED. That would enable me to do things like send a text message to turn a light on or off. So things like that. So I find it really powerful. I'm going to walk you through a quick demo of how to use the APIs. So stick around, and as always, post any questions down below. But I really hope you enjoy the video, and let's get started. Alright, so let's get started taking a look at the RingCentral module for NodeRED. Before we hop over to NodeRED, the first thing we have to do is log in at developers.ringcentral.com and create an app on the RingCentral developers portal. Now you can sign up for a completely free account. You can use this developer account forever. It will have a small watermark on your messages, but for me, that's okay. It doesn't bother me at all, as long as I get my messages. I'm going to click on Create App, and there's going to be a little wizard that's going to walk me through a few steps that I need to do to create the app. In this case, for our NodeRED flow, we're going to choose a other non-UI app and scroll down here and say, only members of my organization or company will be authorized to access your app. I'll select no, that I don't intend to promote the app in their app gallery, and click next. On the next screen, we will see the app type and permissions. The available auth flows will be password and refresh token. If we come down here to app properties, we can type an app name and an app description, and we come down to permissions. The only permission that we will need in this case is the SMS permission, and click create. At this point, we can go into the details for our new app, and we're going to need some values from this page once we get over to NodeRED to plug in and configure the NodeRED RingCentral module. This page open in a tab, and we will revisit it in just a second. Over in NodeRED, the first thing we want to do is come to Manage Palette and install, and search for the RingCentral palette, and we can click install. In this case, I've already done that, and we're ready to start using NodeRED in our flows. Scroll down here on the left hand side, we will see three new nodes here. We have an SMS send, an SMS receive, and a sign URL. We'll get to those in just a second, but let's do a little demo just to illustrate the kind of things we can do with this API in NodeRED. So the first thing I want to do is drag an inject node, and I'm going to have it inject a timestamp, and we're going to repeat that 10 seconds. And the next thing we're going to do is choose a random node, and we'll drag that here. Go into our random. We're going to generate a random number between 1 and 100. We'll use a whole number integer. So we're going to basically, what we're simulating here is some temperature readings from a temperature sensor. Now this could be from an actual sensor, but in this case I'm just going to do a random number for test purposes, And if we hook that up to a debug node and deploy that, if we go to the debug panel, we can see every 10 seconds a message will be output to the debug panel. We can also manually trigger that by clicking on the inject node. So we can see here some random temperature values being output to the debug panel. The next thing I want to do is actually post those up to an MQTT topic, and we'll do that by dragging an MQTT out node and posting a message to the demo temperature topic. And what that will do is post our temperatures up to this MQTT topic. So if we redeploy this test flow and we inject, our random temperatures are now being published up to MQTT. So let's open up a new flow and let's start consuming that MQTT topic. And we say an MQTT in node, and we use that same topic. We can then start consuming that topic in this flow. So if we come over here and we trigger that a few times and come back over here, we will see that our temperature is incoming every time. We can actually change that to a parsed JSON object, and that will give us the actual number instead of a string representing that number. Now at this point, we're receiving the temperature from our other flow via MQTT, and we're simply debugging it. We can put some logic in place to say, send us a text message only when the temperature is below a very specific threshold. And we can do that by dragging a switch node into our flow, and we can say, if the message.payload is less than or equal to 40, we have one branch, and otherwise we have a second branch. So now you can see here that we have two outputs from the switch, one for the first case and one for the otherwise case. So in this case, every time the temperature is going to be below 40, it will be debugged to our panel, otherwise nothing will happen. And we trigger this a few times. We could see some very high readings, 99, 64, 100, but here we have a 27. If we jump back over to flow 2, we can see that only 27 was output to the debug, and that is because our switch node is working as expected. Instead of just debugging that, let's say we want to send ourselves an SMS message every time our temperature is below 40. So in this case, we'll drag a RingCentral send SMS node, and we will double click that to open that up. Create some new credentials for the RingCentral module. We will select add new RC credentials and click the pencil, and here is where we'll grab our values from the RingCentral developer portal. And back in our SMS node, we will enter the recipient phone number that we want to send the text message to and give a friendly name to our node. Now, in addition to debugging the output when it is below 40, we will also send an SMS message to our phone. If we redeploy and trigger a few temperature readings, in this case just one is enough to get a reading below 40, we will see that our temperature has been sent to the debug panel as well as to our phone as an SMS message. That's really simply how to send an SMS. Now let's take a look at receiving SMS messages. Here I have set up an example of a flow that can receive text messages. So here I just have an inject node that injects the current timestamp. I'm using moment to format the timestamp to be the current time minus 60 seconds. And the reason I do that is the RingCentral SMS receive SMS node is going to expect one input, at least one input, and that is the date from. And that's the date time from which you want to retrieve your messages in ISO format. So it's really handy to use the moment plugin to format that timestamp to be 60 seconds ago, so that we can use this to retrieve messages every 60 seconds, and it'll only retrieve those sent in the last 60 seconds. So we have our RingCentral receive SMS node. It uses pagination, so we're going to say we want page 1 and we want 100 messages per page. And the next thing we're going to do is a function node that's going to set message.payload equal to message.response.records, and that is the array of text messages that are retrieved from the RingCentral API. The next step here is a split node, and I'm just going to split that incoming message, and I'm going to use another switch node to check for the text temp in the text message. And if it finds that text, it's going to debug that particular message. Otherwise, it will do nothing. So if we deploy this, and if we come over to the debug panel and open that up, and let's send a few text messages to our account. So the first one being test message, and the next one saying what is the temp. And we've sent 2 messages to our RingCentral number. We manually call the inject node. We will see that we have one object output to the debug panel, and if we open that up and take a look at it, we will see the payload contains all kinds of awesome information about the incoming message. So it has the attachments, it has the subject, which actually contains our message, what is the temp, and that RingCentral watermark, if you will, on the message. And it has a conversation, which includes an ID and all kinds of other awesome stuff that you can use to get information about that message. The final thing I want to show you is the sign URL node. So here we have a case where an incoming message is actually a multimedia message. So if we look at the payload for the incoming message, you will see that the attachments array actually has 2 objects in this case. The second object is a URL that points to the actual attachment that came through in the MMS message. Now, if we copy this URL and we try to visit that URL directly, we are not going to be able to view that object because we do not have a signed URL. If we want to actually sign our URL, what we can do then is drag a sign URL node, and that expects an input of a URL. So if we come over here to inject, and we say inject a string and use the URL, and connect those 2 nodes up, what we can then do is drag a function node in between here, and we can say message.url equals message.payload. And at this point, we can test out by manually triggering the inject node, which will create a signed URL, which we can then use to retrieve our attachment. So that's all it takes to use the NodeRED RingCentral modules to send and receive SMS messages from your NodeRED flows. I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, feel free to leave any feedback below and subscribe to my channel.